beautiful sunrise. So nice. Good morning guys. So we're having a little bit of an issue with our pump and our pressure tank. And the issue that we're having right now is on the suction side of things, so the 1.25" line that's running from the pump down to the tanks, I believe that there's a small air leak. And so what's happening right now is that the pump isn't really maintaining its prime. So there must be some type of backflow, or what I'm thinking is that there's a very small air leak in the in that 1.25" suction line. So I think it might be the union that's located in the shed, just because that's a weak point in the system in terms of like having a perfect seal. So I'm gonna take out the union. That's the first thing that I'm gonna do. Then I'm gonna try the system, see if it works, and if not, then I'm gonna replace the check valve. And then after that, I'm probably out of the more obvious options. It might be a small leak at one of the PVC joints at one of the 90s. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, so I'm gonna head down to Ace. Ace is the place, the helpful place. I must say, out of all the places that I've been to, Ace is definitely the most helpful. So I'm just gonna get some 90s, some couplings, and I'm gonna come back and we're gonna start working on it. Looks like that person over there converted an ambulance into an RV. How cool. Just a little FYI for you, some people think that we live in the middle of nowhere. And I was only driving there for about 10 minutes, right from our driveway to being stopped here at Ace Hardware. We've got a TSC, we've got Ace, we've got Safeway. We've got like a local lumber yard called Benson Lumber. This place has got everything covered for your basic needs. Like obviously this place doesn't have everything. I think the population's only 5,000 or it's 10,000, but it's got pretty well everything that you need. There's a hospital here. There's actually a vet hospital as well. There's a decent amount of stuff going on in Benson. People say it doesn't rain here in the desert, but it's raining. We are getting a little bit of rain today. This is a very, what I would call a light sprinkle. I like how people, one of the top rated comments on the last video, it's never gonna rain for the next 5 years. So we got water coming off of this roof. Huh. It's coming off. Unbelievable. All right, so there we go, guys. The rain roof. Or the rainwater harvesting surface. Already collecting water. We just need a gutter. If we had a gutter, then we'd be in business. It is just a light sprinkle. It might be a small fraction of an inch worth of rain that we'll get today. But just imagine like when there's like an inch of rain coming down in a very short period of time, like in a few hours or less than an hour. Man, this thing is just gonna be pumping out that quality, clean rainwater. So just to quickly explain how this works. It might be hard to see, and I think that's why a lot of people were saying that this isn't gonna work. But the entire thing is pitched this way. So probably from the top there to the bottom here, I don't know, there's at least probably 1 to 2 feet worth of difference from up there to down there. So all the water is just gonna flow down there. And I also made sure that it was gonna pitch from that end all the way down to here. So the gutter itself doesn't even have to be on a pitch. The gutter can just be installed flat with the roof, and the water just by gravity is just gonna naturally trickle down to where there's gonna be a gutter or a downspout right here. And then there's gonna be a downspout in about the middle, somewhere kind of around there. This is kind of funny because this is the second time that we've had rain since I finished the roof. The last time that it rained though, it was overnight, so I wasn't able to get some footage, but I got a little bit of footage there for you guys, so you know it's gonna work. My crazy contraption is working, thank God. All right, so I don't think that I showed the installation of the pressure tank and the pump. It's just a pretty simple system. So what happens here the pump draws water up from the bottom of the tanks, and then it gets pushed up into the pressure tank, and then this little device here basically controls the pump whether or not it goes on or off, and that's based on the PSI. So once it gets down to 40 PSI, the pump kicks on, pumps it up to 60 PSI, and then it shuts off. So what's really nice about having a pressure tank is that when you turn the faucet on, the pump doesn't also have to turn on as well. So there are some systems that people use for their off-grid structures, or it's probably more typical in RVs, where they turn the water on and then the pump has to turn on as well because there isn't a pressure tank. So what's been happening here is we've been basically getting a small air leak somewhere in this 1.25" line that comes from the pump and then goes all the way down to the pressure tank, or down to the bottom of the poly tanks. And how I know that there's an air leak is that the pump it needs to have water in it for it to work properly. And so that's called priming the pump. So the pump should be full of water and it shouldn't ever lose that water. And to prevent that from happening in a system like this, where the pump is actually above the level of the water in the tanks, is that you use what is called a check valve. So the check valve only allows water to flow in one direction. So for example, there's a check valve on this pressure tank system right here. So when the water gets pushed in, it can't go back out, or the pressurized water can't push out back this way and then go back down into the pump. So it's the same thing with drawing water from the tanks. So the pump is above the level of the water in the tanks. So water naturally wants to flow back down the pipe and then into the tanks. But what would happen with that is that would leave the pump dry of water. So we don't want that. So that's why we use a check valve to basically prevent that backflow. But somewhere in this 1.25" line, this is the issue here, is that there's a small air leak. And what's been happening with the air leak, two things that I've noticed, is the water that comes out of the faucet it's very milky water. And what causes the water to get all milky and it almost seems like the water is carbonated, is that there's a lot of extra air that's getting pushed in with the water. And so there's probably a combination of air and water in the tank here, where there should only really be just water. The other thing that's been happening is that the pump, it doesn't bring the tank up to pressure as quickly as it used to. So when we initially got the tanks filled with water, the actual water level in the tanks was above the level of the pump. So this pipe here would stay wet and would stay full of water no matter what, just because the level from the tanks was above the level of the 1.25" pipe here, the inlet, going into the pump. So there's one instance recently where the pump just kept running and running and running and running and running, and I'm watching the pressure gauge and the pressure gauge isn't moving anywhere. So that just means that it's not actually pushing any water because the pump was dry. So you don't want to be running your pump dry because that just basically destroys the pump. It's meant to have water in it. So initially there was a bit of an air leak between this male threaded adapter going into the pump, and I did fix that because I could clearly see that there was an air leak and I could hear it. And there was actually, when the pump would turn off, a little bit of water would drip out the bottom. So I fixed that. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think possibly this union could be an issue. And then if I fix the union and we're still having that issue, then I think it's the check valve. So the check valve just might not be working properly, but I don't think it's the check valve. So I'm gonna open up the priming port on the pump here. We're gonna fill it up with water. I'm gonna basically drain the pressure down to 40 and see how quickly it starts to build up pressure to 60, and I'll know if that was the issue. If not, then we'll go on to the next step. So what I'm trying to do with the troubleshooting here is start with the least expensive solution, and then progressively work my way towards the ones that are more expensive and more time consuming. But I was reading on a number of forums what the issues could be. Basically people are saying check all the PVC joints, because that's obviously one place where there could be a small air leak, and then also the check valve as well. So you can see how cloudy the water is. So that just means that there's a lot of air mixed in with the water, and it'll eventually just go to clear within a minute or two once all the oxygen just kind of separates itself from the water. That other little thing floating in there, that was originally in this little water can. Alright, so you can see that the pressure tank's at 45 psi. Once I open this and it goes down to 40, then the pump is going to kick on. So the pumps only pressurize the tank up to 50 psi, and it's been running for just over a minute. But normally, back when we originally installed this, and the water level was higher in the tank would get pressurized very, very quickly. It just seems to be taking too long, and I can almost kind of hear water in the pipe. There's almost kind of like a gurgling noise that you can sometimes hear. Alright, so just hit 60 psi. So I'm going to move on to stage 2, which is cutting out this union right here, because this union could be a possible leak point. And I have tightened the living bejesus out of this thing. Alright, so I unscrewed the union, and we see here no water really kind of came out. This entire thing should be pretty well full with water, but no water came out. So that means either the check valve is not working or there is another issue. So we're just going to take this fucker right off. I tightened this thing on so much when I put it on. Holy moly, I got this fucker on tight. Alright, so you guys can see there, you can see the water level still right there. So I believe that the check valve still might be working, but I don't know, maybe that's just where the water level for the tanks is at. So it could be at that point right there. Yeah, I'm just gonna take out this union, because this part here, this little doodad, could be where the air leak is. Alright, I think I might have found the cause of our problem here. So this is the other part of the union, so this is what matches up together. And this is just screwed onto a male threaded right there. But the thing is, I just spun this off super easily with my fingers. So I think with all the mucking around that I've done with this piece here, maybe I loosen this up, and then this is what was causing the air leak. Or probably the water would have been leaking out of there. So it would have been an air leak / water leak. Alright, let me try to get some thread tape on these threads here, and I've got the liquid, or the compound, the thread compound as well. So we'll get that on there, we'll tighten the living bejesus out of this onto here, and then we'll just try it once more, and maybe this was it, maybe this was the problem. Something else that I should mention, when I originally fixed this, it was probably like, probably about 4 or 5 days ago, when I originally fixed this, the male threaded that goes onto here, like, it was really loose, even though when I originally put it on, it was like super tight. But I think with a lot of the expansion and contraction that we've been having with the different water temperatures, maybe that loosened it up, and possibly could have loosened this one up as well. So it could be that. So we'll rethread this back onto here. All right, so now that I've got this all attached back up, we'll fill this up with water again. Alright, well, fixing that joint on the union there seemed to fix the problem. It came up to pressure, I think it was probably just over a minute or so, and it was taking at least 4 to 5 minutes before, so I think we fixed our problem. Hey there, Callie? Callie, come here. This is one of the new kitties that we got. Her name's Callie, and the other one's Coco. Coco is she's a black kitty, and this is I think they're called like a tuxedo kitty, and she is just the most adorable and adventurous and very curious kitty. So she's a nice little welcome to the homestead. She loves climbing over the tractor and stuff like that. She's adorable. Anyways, I just wanted to kind of show you guys something a little bit different today as opposed to doing like brand new construction. It's troubleshooting and fixing old stuff that maybe you didn't necessarily do properly. So I've been kind of messing around with this pump for a while now, and now it's at a point where I believe it's gonna be working fine. So if there's any other issues, then I'll just have to fix them then. But when you do a lot of these things yourself and you fix them yourself, it's really good because you really start to understand how all these things work. So even last night and this morning, I'm just reading on websites on Google and stuff, just trying to figure out exactly what might be the cause. So one of the #1 causes of losing suction on this side of the pump is just due to an air leak somewhere. So we found the air leak. It was on the other part of the union. It's kind of weird. I knew it was, I just had a feeling that it was the union, but I thought it was just the union itself that was causing the leak and not the female threaded part of it. But once you start to take things apart and you start to look at it and try to understand how it's all gonna work, then it kind of makes sense when you're troubleshooting and you're fixing, because I knew right away if I could take off that fitting just with my fingers and it didn't really take that much strength at all, I'm like, there's definitely going to be an air leak there, and there's possibly also a small water leak there as well. So that's probably why the level of the water was dropping and the pump wasn't really staying very much primed. And so yeah, so we got this fixed. And anyways guys, the next kind of major project thing that I'm going to be working on is running the 4-inch lines from the poly tanks up to the rain roof, which is working. And that's not going to be for a few days, so I'm going to have some other videos in the meantime that are going to be a little bit more information based. But thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you on the next video. Talk to you soon.